Welcome back to Perkins Pipes. I've got the elegant little Savinelli King's Cross Featherweight out because there's a person I want to talk about who has one of the most elegant names I think I've ever heard. So as always, let's get this guy lit. Let's get to talking. I first encountered Eleanor Windsor Leach when I was a freshman at Indiana University. I had been fortunate I've been fortunate enough to test out of some basic levels of Latin when I enrolled as a freshman, and so right away, first semester even, I was taking higher level Latin classes, which was great for my major in classical studies. And the second semester of my freshman year, I had a class with Ellie Leach. She went by Ellie, but at that time I just knew her by her full name, Professor Eleanor Windsor Leach. Most intimidating name. And it was a course in the poetry of Horace and Catullus, both first century BC Roman poets. And turned out my wife had her for a class as well. I think my wife actually ended up having her for two classes. I only had her for one. A wonderful, wonderful person. She was so gracious to be a guest at our wedding. Several years later, then many, many years later, back in, let's see, about 2016. Is that right? Yeah, I think 2016. I got to see, well, I'd seen her a couple other times on campus, but then in 2016, there was a large convention at Indiana University for Latin students from all over the country. Thousands of students there. We were a part of it, of course, and Professor Leach was giving a talk, and it was so exciting for my wife and me actually to sit in and be students again with his beloved professor. She ended up dying just a few years after that. Elegant name, a bit of an imposing personality, tall, thin. She always kept her hair in this iron gray bun. So a few weeks ago, as of the recording of this video, we were at Purdue University visiting our daughter. Hadn't been to one of my favorite bookshops there in a long time, so I made a point to say, hey, I want to stop in, spend a little time here. And I did. It's a place called Vaughn's Bookstore, V-O-N''S. Wonderful bookstore, multiple levels, nooks and crannies everywhere. Really quite large. And I always like going downstairs to the used books. I found several things over the years, especially in classics. As I was perusing the classics section, I ran across her book. And I'm going to go ahead and cheat for a moment because I don't have it. And I ended up not picking it up this time. It was called Virgil's Eclogues, Landscapes of Experience. We'll bring a picture of the book up here. Virgil's Eclogues, Landscapes of Experience. Now, the Roman poet Virgil, also first century BC, most famous for writing the Aeneid, the great epic poem of the Latin language. Prior to that, he had written two collections of poems. The Eclogues, a collection of 10 poems about shepherds, and the Georgics, a collection of 4 poems about farmers and farming and so forth. I think I may have talked about some of this before. I don't know, something just caught me sad the other day when I looked at Professor Leach's book. It's published in 1974. 50 years ago. She's passed away now. There was the book in the used book section. A lot of great books in the used book sections of bookstores, so that in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing. She dedicated it to her daughter and a teacher of hers who had meant a lot to her. I think that may have been her first book. And as I thought about it, especially as an author, you know about my new book, The Golden Waffle Principle, Finding Meaning in Teaching. I've talked about other books I've written. And I thought about Professor Leach. When she published that book in 1974, I'm sure she was quite excited about it. I would have been. I guarantee, I'll go ahead and make the guarantee. I guarantee there's not one person watching this video who has even heard her name. I'm quite certain there's no one who's heard of that book. It made me sad a little bit. Part of the challenge of being somebody who studies and teaches history, which is part of classical studies, so if I'm going to teach Latin, I am teaching history as well, and so forth. The people I hang out with have been dead for 2,000 years. That's who I spend time with. I spend time with Virgil and Homer and Cicero and Catullus and Horace and Plato and Aristotle and Lucian of Samosata, Seneca. And out of all of the truly countless known but to God, countless numbers of people that have lived on planet Earth, how many do we know? Chances are, if you're watching this video, you may have heard of Homer. I assure you, Virgil was just as big. But chances are you may not have heard of Virgil. And what about all the other writers who have written down through the ages whose names you don't know at all, whose names I will never know? And they published works and they were proud of them. And they were excited, and so were their families when those works came out. And I'm under no illusions, friends, no illusions, that any of my works will live well beyond me. I've talked about this. I've talked about this on this channel. Well, think about Ecclesiastes, the Old Testament book. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity, says the preacher. And he goes through and he talks about how all the things of life seem meaningless because we do them and we die. Somebody else inherits our stuff. The books that we wrote, that we were so proud of at the time, end up in the used section of a college bookstore to stand on a shelf for who knows how long before someone takes them off. You may not think about it this way. Maybe you do. And I suppose that's going to be the question at the end of the video here. But I do think about it. Will anyone know my name? Now, yes, I know. Look, those of you who are Christians, you're going to say, well, it doesn't matter who knows your name. God knows your name. He knew your name before you were born. Fair enough. True. But I'm sorry, friends, I can't help it. I'm a classicist. I deal in history. I deal in names and people and places and works from a distant age. And I think about those things. I'm not depressed about it by any means. As a Christian, I would agree, my hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly lean on Jesus' name. On Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand. And that's true. All other ground is sinking sand. But it doesn't keep me from being a little sad from time to time as I think about all of the names and the people whose works existed for a short period of time. Now, the flip side of that is, what a wonderful thing that we have wonderful works of music and art and literature that only do last for a short time. Hey, they decorated our lives. You see the trees the leaves that are falling and are gone behind me. And we enjoy them for a season and then they're gone. And then new leaves come back. New flowers come back. So not everything maybe is meant to be the Iliad of Homer, the Republic of Plato, the speeches of Cicero, or the Aeneid of Virgil. Maybe some things just are meant to exist for a short period of time. Maybe that's good enough. So, I don't know. Feeling a bit wistful today. And so I'll leave you with this question. Is there anything you have created, made, and I'm not just talking about your children, but anything that you have created or made that you would like to have some life beyond you? That would like to live beyond you for some time? Does that matter to you at all? Are you okay with the fact that, friends, it probably won't? Curious about your thoughts about that. Your thoughts on the lasting and the ephemeral. Friends, loved sharing thoughts with you. Can't wait to see what some folks say. As Malcolm Guite likes to say, I do these little things in order at last to do nothing. Or as I like to say in Latin, Parva ut tandem. Nihil agam. Have a wonderful day.